Two Canadian universities came under fire during their Frosh Week activities for using a chant that promotes rape. Are these actions examples of rape culture, or does this reflect something larger, the millennial generation's ironic detachment from society, if you will? Joining us now in the nation's capital, Rena Bivens. She's research fellow at the School of Journalism and Communication at Carleton University. And Rena, we're glad to have you on the line from the nation's capital. How are you tonight?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
You're going to forgive me here, but for those who haven't heard this story, I want to just read out an excerpt of the chant that they were saying at UBC. And here's a bit of it. They spell out Y-O-U-N-G at UBC. We like 'em young. Y is for your sister. O is for oh so tight. U is for underage. N is for no consent. G is for go to jail. That's what some of the people have been chanting. And I'd like to know your reaction when you first heard that this was happening, what your reaction to it was.
I was not surprised.
Not surprised?
No.
Why not?
This is something that has been going on for many years. Even at St. Mary's, they've said that these chants have been going on since at least 2009. It's only now that we're starting to talk about these chants.
Why, apparently, this is an odd question, but there were not just men. I guess some people expect that young men will engage in this kind of stupidity, but there were young women involved in doing this as well. And I wonder why women would be participating in a chant that appears to promote rape.
I'm also not surprised by this either. I see this all the time. I see this on, for instance, Facebook pages that are joking about rape, that might promote rape. There are women and men. Everybody is joining in on this. For me, this really relates to the fact that so many people are complicit in this rape culture. So many people are unable to unpack the problems that happen when you start chanting about rape, when you start joking about rape.
Okay, but my suspicion is people will understand that if you're 17 or 18 or 19 and you've had 6, 7, 8, 9 beers, and you're a young man, you've got the potential to say some incredibly stupid things. But young women? Why do women do it?
Of course, well, it's seen as something that's edgy and cool, right? So these leaders who are getting all the frosh to sing these chants with them, this is something that's edgy and cool for them to do. It's something that we see even in songs like Blurred Lines by Robin Thicke. It's something that's cool, it's fun, so you don't want to stop that fun. Girls are participating in this too, and they see it as cool and fun. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we don't take sexual violence seriously.
How do we know that chants like these contribute to what you have called a culture of rape?
Well, I see this as just one manifestation. There are so many elements in our society that contribute to rape culture. And what that means, a lot of people have trouble understanding that, but what that means is that we are condoning sexual violence. We're seeing it as acceptable. We're normalizing it. So if we're able to joke about this, if we think it's cool to talk about rape, to sing no consent, then that means that we don't take it very seriously, that we don't understand the consequences of sexual violence. And it's also part of the culture of silence around this. Like, I saw so many people being horrified by this, being outraged by this, being really surprised. And for me, it's not shocking. And for a lot of people who understand these issues, it's not shocking either. Because these are things that we see all the time happening. This happens in so many levels throughout society. This happens every day. This happens when judges in Manitoba blame victims of rape for the clothing they're wearing. There's so many different manifestations of this, and this is just one.
Okay, but can you really draw a direct line between somebody making a chant, the likes of which I described earlier, and sexual assault? Can you draw that direct line?
That's an excellent question. So let's think about it. So you're chanting and you're saying, you might just realize, right, sex with an underage girl is normal. It's acceptable. It's something that we're laughing about, we're joking about, we're chanting about. Does that mean that someone's going to turn around and rape someone? We cannot draw that direct line. We don't have research surrounding these people who are involved in these chants or involved in all sorts of different everyday examples of rape culture, and then we follow them and track them and see if they're violent towards someone or aggressive towards someone. But what we do know is that there is evidence a direct link between people who internalize traditional social ideas about women's place in society and people who view images of women who are being objectified. They are much more likely to accept rape myths, to blame rape victims, for instance.
Okay, I want to make sure I'm clear on that. So you're not saying there's a direct line between these chants and rape, but you will draw the direct line between that and, say, an increasing, at the very least, disrespect for women and their role in society, et cetera. Is that, have I got that right?
Absolutely, an increasing acceptance of rape, an increasing acceptance of viewing women's bodies as something that men are entitled to.
Okay, let me read something. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, you wanted to finish the thought.
Sorry, yeah, I think the issue here is how do we resolve this, right? So should we stop these chants because that means that two people who chanted are going to go out that evening and rape someone? That's not the reason why we need to stop these chants. That's not the reason why we need to have these discussions. What we need to do is we need to explore how rape culture exists, how we can challenge rape culture on the everyday level, how we can act as bystanders who see people joking about rape or people blaming the victim or people being aggressive towards women, being aggressive towards anybody, and how we can act as bystanders to have people treat people as people.
Okay, I understand your point. We mentioned off the top that UBC was the place where that chant that I read earlier was from. You pointed out that St. Mary's University down east in the Maritimes had a similar chant come to light in the past couple of weeks as well. And I want to read something that a professor from St. Mary's University named Mark Mercer, he wrote this in talking about the administration's response to all of this. He said, St. Mary's has betrayed its identity as a university, as a place that is of free inquiry and intellectual community. It said that the students who participated in the chant violated the university's commitment to the values of equality and respect. Now, there's much to be said about the students involved, about their judgment and perhaps about their commitment to those two values. But they did not discriminate against anyone or show disdain for any particular person. Thus, they did not violate either equality or respect. What's your reaction to that?
That's interesting. So, by suggesting that it's normal and it's okay to have sex with underage girls, or I think the bigger problem here is the part where they say no consent. To say that it's normal and it's okay to chant about no consent, and then that's not somehow breaking any kind of values, it's an interesting thing, because it's right that it's a song, it's a chant. It's not that they are specifically directing it towards anybody in particular. But I think that confuses the issue here. I think the issue is that and one of the reasons why this keeps continuing, one of the reasons why this is not surprising to me, is that this rape culture is something that's much wider than that. It's not something that we can just pinpoint and say that it's this value that's been broken, etc. It's something that is happening every day in so many different ways. One thing that I think is really important here is how we view masculinity. Rape culture is a problem not just for women who experience sexual violence, men who experience sexual violence, not just for the victims. It's a problem even for men generally, because it's insulting to them. This idea that they can't control themselves. Is that how we want to view masculinity? Is that how we want men to act? We need to be able to come up with different models of masculinity, non-violent ways to be a man, and to be a man and be cool, even though you're not violent and you're not aggressive, and you don't think that getting no consent for sex is cool and okay.
Well, many people in the country obviously are quite rightly deeply disturbed by all this, but as we've pointed out, it's been going on for several years, and I wonder if there isn't something actually positive that has happened by virtue of all this coming forward now. There is attention being paid. We are having discussions about all of these issues that you obviously care so much about. Is that a good thing?
Absolutely. And that's why, even though I'm not surprised, I am so happy that people are saying they're horrified and outraged. But it can't just stop there. We've had a number of issues in Canada over the past few years that have brought this kind of attention, and I love to see that. Like, we can talk about Rena Parsons, we can talk about Amanda Todd. There's been so many incidences where we get this kind of attention. But what is the result of this? What can we do about it? And I think that's something that we have to engage in more. Let's not just engage in why did this happen? Is this shocking? Is this new? Let's engage in how can we make this change? How can we push this further? How can we move forward in our quest to dismantle rape culture?
Let me really make sure I'm clear and that I understand, though, what you believe here. Clearly, some of the students who participated in this didn't realize the gravity of what they were doing. Having said that, do you think that the students who participated in these chants actually support the notion of raping minors or, going to jail or this kind of thing?
We can't say that every person who participated in this supported that. Absolutely not. They're taking part in frosh activities. They're trying to have fun. They're being asked to chant these words. A number of students who are participating in this had not come up with these words, but a number of them are participating in it, and maybe they're questioning it now. Maybe they're starting to think about it, but we can't say for sure that all of them felt that it's okay to rape. But I'm sure that the fact that they're in university, the fact that they've made it this far in life, means that they've come across a lot of this in their lives. They've come across a lot of acceptance and tolerance and normalization of rape.
There will be, though, an argument that, boys will be boys, and when you take young people and you put them in a frosh week circumstance, and you put them, not only that, but in a group of whatever, 10, 15, 20, 25, 50 people, and add alcohol to the mix to be sure, there's a kind of a groupthink that takes over. And, this generation, being what it is, may have just thought they were being funnily ironic or something like that. Do you buy any of that?
No. And boys will be boys? What does that mean? That means that we can never change our conceptions of masculinity. That means that men have to be violent to be cool or aggressive. That means that men have to be able to boast about sexual conquest. That means we have to be able to view women's bodies as something to be attained. And that means that we can never inch towards an idea of enthusiastic consent, where your partner says, yes, I want to have sex with you. Why isn't that something that we are driving towards, that we're striving towards? And another issue here is that this is not just about university-going women. That's not just the concern here. There are men who are raped as well. There are all kinds of people who experience sexual violence. And here in Canada, when we're talking about these incidences, we should also be talking about the epidemic of murdered and missing Aboriginal women in this country.
These chants and this phenomenon apparently have been around for a few years anyway. I wonder why you think this issue is only gaining national attention now, given that this is not a new thing. This has been going on for years.
One thing is, there was a video. Video is an important social capital these days. When you have something on video and you can spread it around, it's something that people can view and they can come up with their own impressions, their own understanding of the situation. So that's one reason. But maybe we can hope that over the years, when we've been increasingly concerned about issues like Rena Parsons and now these chants, maybe we can see that as an indication that we are starting to understand that even just chanting about something contributes to the wider problem that we're trying to solve here.
We're asking people in a Twitter chat whether this generation of, I guess, mostly millennials is too casual in its use of the word rape. And I think we've both, you and I, probably seen examples in popular culture today where mostly young people, I'd say, use the word rape in a way that, say, previous generations would have said, boy, we really got you there. At a sporting event, for example, oh boy, he really raped them on that one, didn't he? The word has taken on that kind of a connotation. How did that word suddenly become acceptable usage to mean something else in this day and age? I can't figure that out. Can you help me with that?
Again, I think it's because we are tolerant of rape. It happens so frequently and we are so silent about it, we don't understand a lot of this. We don't understand the root causes of it. We don't understand how the way in which we socialize our children can contribute to this. The way in which we understand gender can contribute to this. But when people use words like rape, like that exam raped me, sometimes they're just being lazy. And they just don't really understand the connotations that are behind that and what kind of power dynamics they're reproducing when they use words like that.
I got to follow up on that, though, because I really find it hard to believe that this generation of parents is somehow inculcating their children in the notion that rape is not awful and serious, and that therefore their kids have somehow picked up on that value and therefore go tossing around the word willy-nilly like it means nothing. I can't believe this generation of parents is doing that. Do you think that?
I think a lot of people are to blame if we want to put the blame on somebody. It's a societal issue. It's not individual parents. But it's a little bit difficult to understand all these roots, and maybe that's part of the problem here. Maybe that's why this keeps continuing for so many years and we haven't been able to really move very much forward with this. But when we're talking about parents and how they raise their children, children are so gendered in their lives from such an early age. When it's babies, we're wondering, is it a boy, is it a girl? And right away, they have this sex assignment on them, right? And one way that we can understand this is that there's only so much space that you're allowed to move within when you're male or when you're female. So understand it in this way. So you're born, you're decided you're a boy, you're a girl, that's your sex assignment, right? And then you move down this pillar and you're expected to move in this way. We have a lot of social expectations around this. Then you are determined to be, you're going to become a man, you're going to become a woman on this side. Next, you have a gendered expression. If you're a man, you should act masculine. If you're a woman, you should act feminine. You should dress in a feminine way, your hair should be feminine, etc., etc. If you deviate from that, there's some kind of social intolerance that happens, and we all know this. And then you move down and you're supposed to have sex with someone of the opposite sex, and eventually you're supposed to get married to one person and have children. We all know this script, and we know that when people deviate from it, we have problems with it. And sometimes men in some instances are able to deviate more, like maybe they're able to have more sexual partners than women, but sometimes men are even further restricted because they're not allowed to express themselves in feminine ways, whereas females can be tomboys and not get as much social pressure from that.
Rena, I've got a minute left here and I want to try one more thing. We know in popular culture today, I'm not going to use the word, I'll say what everybody says. The N-word is completely unacceptable to use, except some African Americans and African Canadians do use it with each other. And under certain circumstances, some comedians toss it around and everybody thinks it's funny under certain circumstances. My question is, do those similar kinds of circumstances exist for the word rape? Is there ever an acceptable usage of that word in the way that these kids are using it today?
Absolutely. I believe you can joke about rape. You can joke about rape when rape victims are not the butt of the joke and when the joke is actually funny.
Boy, I'm tempted to ask for an example because I can't think of one off the top of my head here. Have you got one?
Sure. There's one example of a comedian, I can't recall his name, but he's talking about how he's going down a subway, a dark alleyway, and there's a woman in front of him, and he's trying to catch up to her because he's trying to catch his train. Actually, he's not trying to catch up to her, but he's racing, and then he notices that she's looking behind her. She's starting to go faster, and then he realizes, wait a minute, she actually thinks I'm a rapist. Of course, he tells a joke in a much funnier way with probably a few added details, but instead of placing the butt of the joke being the rape victim, but instead the fact that, of course, a woman walking down a dark alleyway with a man chasing behind her, running faster, she's obviously going to think, wait a minute, I might be in trouble.
Okay, I got you now. Rena Bivens, it's awfully good of you to join us from the nation's capital. Thanks very much. Professor, also the Pauline Jewett Institute of Women's and Gender Studies professor at Carleton University. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.